if you're a marketer in B2B, you don't have to look far today to see, LLMS.txt works. No, it doesn't work. We talked a little bit last episode about referral traffic from LLMs converts better than organic, and others saying, no, it doesn't. So there's a lot of contradicting stuff out there right now. And so we have spent some time preparing for this episode to very much dig into what we know is working, what we are seeing working with clients, and really just kind of sticking to the facts there. So that's what we're going to do for today's session. I am Nate Turner, co-founder of 10Speed, and I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, my co-founder.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot to talk about as it relates to what we're hearing in the industry, what's working, what's not. And, when we look at our clients and our client data, there's a lot of, validation in terms of just not only some of the stuff that the industry's talking about, but stuff that I think they're maybe getting wrong or speaking inaccurately about. So I'm excited to talk about it. A lot of real insightful stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had a few folks from our team. We're out at Brighton SEO conference in San Diego. Was that last week, I think?
Last week.
And that was kind of one of the takeaways was there was actually a lot of contradiction, a healthy dose of fear mongering a little bit, and
totally,
some decent doses of weak data, to support arguments as well. So I think maybe a bit of an IRL reflection of what's happening online.
Yes, for sure.
Ultimately. So anyway, with that, I'm gonna kind of be just teeing up topics for you and kind of interviewing you almost on some of these. So
yep.
The first piece that we've seen is Evergreen and TOFU, so top of funnel content driving brand visibility. So I want to start there.
Yeah. And also to preface all of these things, topics, points that we're going to talk about, it's all going to be about different content types that we're seeing successful. So that's obviously, you just alluded to that with that, like top of funnel content, but also stages of the funnel.
Yep.
What's driving real good visibility. There's some stuff around like what is driving lower funnel intent and conversions and stuff, but I just want to point that out beforehand. But yes, Evergreen and TOFU content being, a natural good starting point for the conversation.
Yeah.
Is it's still effective. Let's say that. But why is the real big thing. So when digging into our client data, one of the big things that I noticed in another caveat is like hyper relevancy to product and ICP, right?
Yeah.
So like reframing what top of funnel is. I think historically, and this isn't like a mind-blowing like insight, but it used to be a lot of stuff that was not super relevant, right? Just things that drove traffic and
correct,
right?
Yeah.
So I think the thing that we're seeing is if you are super focused on the right core concepts around the top of the funnel. So again, like high traffic drivers,
yep.
But do help educate that audience, you're still gonna get some really strong visibility.
Yep.
I can stop there.
Oh, keep going.
Okay. Yeah. It's really interesting. I will also say too, one of the things I observed recently, and this is through the like search lens, SEO lens, is that because it's super recent. The stuff I looked at was like the past 3 months. There's a lot of positive impacts to businesses from some of the like Google algorithm updates that have happened that are that's driving this, and it actually seems like Google's like they're actually rewarding really targeted content strategies. That's like another big part of all of the points we're going to
which
make.
Isn't probably getting as much attention because of everything else going on with, Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like, so on that point, like there was an update in August, there was a spam update, which is very relevant to this relevant TOFU content driving visibility.
Yes.
That we saw a ton of really helpful evergreen, high quality, like longer form content increasing in traffic in search, which made its way into a bunch of different areas, including AI overviews, good rankings, all that type of stuff. But like specifically content types like listicles, yes. think, and I'm trying to keep some brands anonymous, of course, but like things that are like really big tips to doing the thing that you do in your space around a specific product.
Right. Right. So hyper relevant, like you said.
Yeah. Right. But like, I think right now there's a conversation around that type of content will be really eaten up by AI and LLMs and all that. And I don't think it's as black and white as that based on the data we're seeing. Like that piece of content, which could be like 50 tips to do XYZ within your space, right? To do your job better, et cetera, which would naturally be a top of funnel piece, is not only growing in traffic because it's getting, if it's hyper relevant, super competitive, right? Differentiates in some way. It's getting increased visibility in AIOs, which I already mentioned, but also getting cited in LLMs too, when there's conversational prompts happening around that. So there's a lot going on, but like the narrative online right now would be that don't go create that piece of content, right? Like you don't need to, because that AI and LLMs are gonna, no, we're seeing like really significant traffic gains.
So yeah, kind of an old adage, like you should always kind of question anything that's positioned as always or never. I guess I just said always, but you should question that. So anyone who's saying you know, in that kind of framing, like don't create this, I think is kind of in a never type of tone. Whereas kind of what you're saying is context matters, you know, the actual topic, how relevant it is to your product and your ICP, versus just trying to write to get traffic and, you know, any and all traffic, which is, you know, again, the spam update, you know, long time coming and kind of like been evolving from the EEAT stuff over time. But so you mentioned, I did want to clarify when you said like driving brand visibility, you're saying kind of across everything, like LLM visibility, AIOs, which again, AI overviews, which would be the, you know, kind of the top part of Google search, and then organic search as well. So like not just the AIO, but also still some kind of typical blue link traffic as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because it ties to also some other stuff we'll talk about in a little bit further down the funnel where, you know, you can get into more branded content, but like these top of funnel pieces that are high relevancy, helpful, tactical too, really help improve awareness around us, even existing brands. Like, so I looked at it across like bigger brands that we're working with, as well as smaller brands. If you have a lot of domain authority, right, like, and you've been around a long time, you should be doing that type of content. You're going to crush it, because if you're, you know, again, trying to keep things a little vague in terms of the brands, but like it's worth going after to create that type of content. And keep it, the other piece here is keeping it evergreen. So when I was digging in, a handful of pieces I saw published, like, you know, spring of 2024 initially. And like, all it is just kind of ticking up. So it's like basically the breaking through, if you were to plot out all of the like AI, LLM updates and all of the like things that would say that this thing should probably just never succeed. It's been continuously growing as all of those, not only iterative updates to like LLMs have happened, but AIOs have gotten more powerful. Like, so you can see that that content is actually feeding those things, and it's winning on its hyper relevancy and helpfulness, essentially. If I need to be more specific,
are you, is there any evidence that like the cadence for updating is changing to like keep something evergreen?
I think it's still like kind of I don't want to say old playbook a lot, but I think the fundamentals around updating content, there's like a spectrum of like, depending on competitiveness. And so like, you know, if it's a really high traffic driver, hyper relevant, and there's a lot of competitors in your space, you should probably be looking at revisiting that like on a quarterly basis. I did see that some of the stuff that we were looking at, that I was looking at, hadn't even been updated that often. So it could even use some more. If we were to nurture it even more, it probably would do
even better.
But I would say like more competitive, make sure you're looking at it quarterly. You could probably be getting away with like maybe once a year, depending on if it's not but yeah.
So I have one observation and one question. observation is last episode we talked about the Search Engine Journal State of SEO 2026, I think it is. One of the things that we kind of noticed in that survey data was SEOs talking about measuring brand visibility and how that was sort of a departure from the past.
Yeah.
So this definitely seems to kind of like paint that picture with a little more detail, I would say. And then the question I have is, if you're saying top of funnel type of topics, very relevant to your product, you like 50 tips of how to do this thing, which is relevant to your ICP and can be done with the company's product. Would you say that also just has benefit to customer marketing too? If ultimately like sort of a adoption of the product and everything there, like it's not even just top of funnel awareness, it's almost like customer marketing too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Specifically being like, then how to do this, so taking it one step further, being like how to do that thing with that product or brand.
I mean, you certainly could branch off and have far more detailed content, but I mean, even just thinking back to Sprout days, like there was constantly social media managers using our tool who would love tips or, a quick thing that was like, we had a huge guide of like all the holidays or like, the National Burger Day or whatever. Like that's a very top of funnel type of thing, but it's actually like super helpful for the client. And not that like the product does anything for that, but like you're going to use the product to build around that.
Totally.
So that's what I mean by like, there seems like a tie to customer marketing too.
Absolutely. Some of the stuff, the examples that I pulled to like get the data were exactly that. The tips that you would like get or tactics that you would get from these pieces of content would directly apply to the product. So like product can easily be mentioned, but then also you could repurpose that content into actual customer marketing like initiatives as well. So like the content serves multiple purposes as well.
Yep.
It's not so broad and like unbranded, right? That's what I'm getting at.
Yep. Cool. And then the second thing to cover was like targeted AIO. So specifically, I guess in this case, are you referring more to AI overviews or optimizing for like more like GEO?
It's
optimizing for.
It's a bit of both. Like what I really heavily looked at was AI overviews in this specific instance and the way we were able to roll up the data. But it does apply to both. Like I did some prompt analysis on some of the content that we were looking at. But yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both, leaning heavily into AIOs just because, I don't know, there's also some thoughts that we have internally around like Google being like under not valued, but like they're the underdog right now, I think a little bit in terms of like of the narrative around AI search and all of that, right? Like there's been a big emphasis on LLMs like ChatGPT and that like eating their lunch. But the reason I kind of pulled on this thread when it came to targeted AI overviews was that like the conversation around that is that those are equaling 0-click searches, right? So like it's just summarizing everything and like, I guess like it's maybe not worth even trying to rank or get visibility there. And what we're seeing now that the dust has settled, it's actually very worthwhile to not only like analyze those AI overviews like you would previously for other things, but to like very aggressively put your time into that because that's where we're seeing a lot of that traffic growth. And again, valuable traffic. Like there's going to be a lot I'm talking around traffic, but this is super relevant content we're talking about here.
Well, it's definitely, if you go back and map from the introduction of it, like very early on, the AI overviews is like essentially a rich snippet.
Yes.
And just like pulling that text. And now when you expand that result, there are a lot of, it's like there's structure, there's headers, there's links from that. And so like, so that's an interesting point. So what do you mean by targeted, in this case, when we say targeted?
Targeted, good question. It's kind of more like keyword targeting to some extent, but like it's the intentionality behind going after AI overview optimization, essentially.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's become a bit of an afterthought. Not to be redundant in my previous point, but like if you really analyze how what queries are driving that, you should be able to find yourself into multiple AI overviews for a specific topic.
Yeah.
That seem to have compounding growth based on what we're seeing. And for transparency too, we're looking at for AI overview reporting, because that's clear. That's very important in this conversation. So it's not just BS that we're using Ahrefs, their AI overview reporting, because they do have one where you can see on the SERP. You can isolate not only top pages that are getting traffic from AI overviews, but like keywords that, are triggering an AI overview and all that. So you can really get very good data on that.
Yeah.
So this, just in case anybody's like, Google doesn't give you that information, because they don't.
Correct.
Very important point to clarify. But yeah, and then that actually even ties to the first point that we talked about, which is like the Evergreen. It's not all top of funnel. Like the targeted AI overviews, they're triggering throughout the funnel, branded, middle funnel, lower funnel, all that.
Yep.
So that's what I also mean by targeted, is like really analyzing the stages of the funnel. You can almost create what it seems to be based on these pieces of content, like an understanding of how to map discoverability through each of those stages by understanding what AI overviews are triggering at the top to then feed into content that would come in the middle.
Right.
Which I don't want to jump into the next point, but all of these are tied together.
Yeah.
But there's some other interesting observations there.
Yeah. So fair assessment that not all AI overviews are equal, and some, like, by being intentional and like really looking at which ones to go after, which ones to optimize for, like they can have more significant impact on your business.
Yeah. And I think another point, like to like be specific about it too, is like when we first got our ability to actually look at performance in AI overviews, again, like even through an Ahrefs or any other tool that might be doing that, like people might be using SEMrush, all you were able to really understand was like, all right, so now AI overviews are here. Where do we happen to be? And it was mostly those like broad, generic kind of terms and legacy content.
Correct.
But now we've had enough time out with AI overviews out there that you can do really targeted work to not only like go like, we don't want to be in these AI overviews and we want to be in these AI overviews. So it gives you an even more specific roadmap for like the new way to optimize your content for those things.
Yep. Yes.
And it goes back to fundamentals, like, all right, we're getting an AI overview for this like question that is like adjacent to our category because we have that piece. We don't want that, right? So let's tighten up our content footprint.
Yep.
And then understand where we're not triggering on brand queries and all that, and go and create those pieces of content.
Yeah.
So it's fruitful.
Yeah.
Like,
and are you seeing more like intent matching and the actual like content, or is it more heavily weighted on like the structure schema part of it? Both, like just from anyone who's kind of trying to think practically about.
I do think it's a bit of both. I mean, I think the schema stuff, like schema and everything, can give you an edge, like it and has in the past to some extent. But I mean, that makes it sound like you shouldn't be doing it as a fundamental best practice. Like I think if you do all of those things, then you give yourself the best shot at being included in those. And then at that point, if you've done everything, it's all about competitor analysis. Just going like, all right, so that first summary has the like one site link citation that brings up the 4 links on the side. Who's the number one in there and all that.
Yeah.
And then the other part of this too, that I also don't want to forget is that there is a actual strong correlation or observation I had with getting a lot of traffic growth from AI overviews, but also not having a strong ranking position in the blue links. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which one shows that like the AI overview, like the AI overviews might be pulling from further down. So like it isn't all about optimizing for position one within the traditional links because of a variety of factors. It could be domain ratings, whatever. I think it's actually what we're seeing is that it's just citing the best content or sources, regardless of being maybe like a backlink profile to that specific piece or anything.
Yeah.
Which was like one of the more interesting takeaways from this. Probably need more analysis, but like, like all the pieces that were getting traffic didn't have just a strong organic position on it, but it was getting good clicks from an AI overview SERP.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Totally. And one more question on this, like, so for any like B2B marketer listening and kind of thinking about, where they're focusing time, how to approach all this, it's safe to say that basically what you're seeing, I kind of asked at the start of this question around or this point, if you meant AI overviews or optimizing for LLMs. So this in particular, the data you're citing and stuff is AI overviews, but it's not that like this process is terribly different. Like you should be seeing benefits around citation and stuff as well. It's not like there's a separate set of things to be doing with that same content to try to make it work for both.
No, and if
there's overlap.
No, and if you did, then you could possibly be like competing with creating competing priorities to some extent that like would make you not successful in one or the other.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely a big overlap. The freshness thing is a big part of it, which meaning just making sure it's up to date. It seems like LLMs are citing things that are more relevant and up to date, which again, like feeds into everything we've just talked about, like keeping it super relevant to product, relevant to strong intent, and authoritative, right? Which we'll get into a little bit with some other stuff, but yeah.
Cool. So then the next one was product content that solves real problems.
Yes.
Parentheses, middle of funnel and bottom of funnel.
Yes.
Content.
This is actually one of the like more exciting ones, I think, because it's rewarding something that I think historically harder to get done content wise, but is absolutely like a worthwhile effort. So a couple other, I guess caveats, or not caveats, prefaces. Middle funnel being like high intent content that can be like not as branded. We talk about it a lot in a variety of ways, but let's just for simplicity say that. So like, that can be like the best X software content, right?
Sure. Yep.
And then bottom of funnel being more branded, right? So definitely something that's like heavily considering influencing a purchase, right?
Yep.
But like a good example of something I saw like paying off really big dividends that was created this past year, and I will again keep the brand anonymous, was a piece created by the company that we helped create that really breaks down in more transparent language their like pricing structure.
Yeah.
And it being like really getting a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
Which you could see tying to like a lot of the discovery that they're seeing at the top of the funnel.
Yes.
And then pushing people further down the funnel.
Yeah.
But like builds trust, gets people concrete answers before signing up. It's something I think we have always been very big advocates of in terms of just like, let's put it out there.
Yeah.
I think the days of being like really opaque about like your pricing and how you do that, I know on the enterprise side, that's still tough, but like, I think anybody who has the confidence and to just go forth with that type of stuff, as long as it doesn't put you in a weird position from a sales standpoint, I think it's like probably a pretty blue ocean for you.
Yeah. Because
your competitors are probably not doing it. Like I haven't seen a ton of companies doing it, but there's a few that we've done it for, and it looks like it's doing quite well.
So when you say quite well, is that across organic search and LLM, or are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the other thing is that that type of content is even more powerful for the LLM referral traffic because you're taking control of the narrative. One of the things that we won't get into as much on this one, probably in this convo, is citations in general, like you want to get like your brand on all of the review sites, and it's going to like weigh some of that stuff heavily. You want to still have a control of that conversation on your website.
Totally.
Because it's taking that into consideration. If it doesn't, the talk track we've always had with our clients and prospects is that, like, you want to take control of that, plant a flag. If you're not telling that story, someone else will, because they will. Like, some competitor is going to see you not doing that, and then they can tear you down or tear down your pricing and all of that.
Or just say completely wrong stuff too. Yeah.
So like, yeah. And this is something I would say anybody should have been doing for a long time. But I'd say it's more of I guess it's table stakes now. Like, you should be doing it because there's a real big significant win there in the AI search world.
Yeah.
More so than it ever was before, because I think people were just afraid that, like, oh, those branded queries aren't there and anything, but I think they're there now.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because I know when the AI overviews were starting to roll out, that was one of the things that almost seemed like a killer of the, like, whatever, best project management software query, is that view where, like, it would pull in project management software tiles, into that SERP. And it seemed like, oh, that's dead. And then, like, obviously, like, G2 and some of those sites have also created content. That seemed like maybe they were going to primarily dominate that. I feel like that's sort of all evened out. But yes, now on the LLM side, sort of the GEO perspective, there's certainly a lot of leverage there in that type of content.
Yes. And also, to give a couple of other examples too, because the one that, like, really got me excited was the one that was about like plans, pricing, all that type of stuff. Because that's, like, a harder one to get people to buy into being, like, even more transparent about.
Yeah.
And if you can write that in a voice that's not even as, like, product marketing-y, like, write it as if you're another brand doing it in a sense, but that'll be super, super impactful. But the other stuff is, like, longer tail, like, use case specific content. Anything how to do XYZ with my product for XYZ, industry, function, use case, whatever. I pulled like 10 different examples of that across multiple clients, and they all seem to be doing really, really well.
Yes.
So they're branded, but they can also be, depending on the space, like an unbranded term, too.
And that makes sense, because that kind of matches the lengthening query. The length of queries that are much longer on LLMs. So instead of just saying best project management software, it's like, I'm a marketing ops director at this type of company at this size, and we need to integrate with blah 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 blah.
Totally.
And therefore, yes, the more detail you have there, and that's like we talked a while ago about, like, help center content too. Being ungated, and for a long time it's just been, like, so basic, like the amount of, like, here's how to cancel your plan, and that kind of, here's how to add another user. But, like, to really leverage that, which is meant to be far more detailed than in product type of stuff, like, here is exactly how you integrate with this tool, here's exactly how you set up this bidirectional sync, or whatever those things might be.
Totally.
But not entirely from just the customer support lens, or like a product engineering lens. It's like, let's make sure we're solving the problem and matching intent and stuff too.
Absolutely. This actually is, we were talking about this on an internal like strategy review for a newer client. It's earlier on, but we were talking about help center content as, like, a thing that probably makes sense for them in this space, and they don't have it yet. But like anything we've talked about, prioritization is important. So there's a few key things we need to do first, but, like, it was on the heels of all of these, like, new insights that we're talking about now, which is that, like, this stuff is super helpful. We always recommend, like, arming that content. That's probably a weird way to phrase that, but, like, if you have a help center, we see it a lot with AI data companies, more technical products, where they have like really robust either like developer documentation, which would be more of that, or help center stuff that's, you know, spread across maybe multiple subdomains. So there's a lot of nuance and like business decision making that probably has to go into some of this. But sometimes they're not indexed, and like there's a lot there. If you've been around for a while and you have a ton of that and it's not necessarily driving organic traffic, this is the time to revisit it, because you can absolutely be feeding into LLMs, and you might already have like a treasure trove of just like automatically created content because your developers created it, or so if you're in-house at a company like that, then
I mean, I was 6 or 7 years into my time at Sprout when we kind of took on the project to ungate so Help Center was only accessible to customers who were logged in. So kind of ungating that, making it publicly facing, and moving it onto the root domain in a subfolder. Was a big project, but it was like nearly overnight, the amount of like added traffic that came from that. And then I don't think we ever fully like explored all the ways that we could have optimized it even then. And that's obviously, you know, well ahead of anything that's happening on the LLM front now. So I think there's a ton of opportunity there. So I mean, you think this area of optimization for companies, do you think it becomes more important over the next few years, or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exciting for some key functions too. Like we always talk about, like product marketing is like sometimes not existent at a company. And I think like having the right people to collaborate on this type of content is going to just be so, again, to use it, fruitful as LLMs continue to grow in terms of referral traffic. But just, you know, AIOs, all of this. And then I know we're talking about this through that lens of like AI search because it's so top of mind, but like it's worth noting that this stuff is conversion driving content or influencing content. Like it isn't just to drive branded awareness or clicks at the bottom of the funnel or clicks at the bottom of the funnel. This is stuff that has intent, that is clearly around either people searching on how to use your product because they're thinking about using it. Or again, on the customer marketing side too. Like, they might be using it and they just don't know how to find it because your site's massive or something. But there's so many opportunities there, and it's worthwhile focusing in on it. Yeah.
So to add to that, I mean, you just mentioned brand visibility, you know, influencing pipeline and conversion, like a number of things we're kind of talking through there. Let's talk about authority. So, you know, data backed and like trend content, which, you know, is authority building. Maybe we can kind of shift to that.
Yeah, for sure. A few categories we work with seem to be working. What seems to be working well is hyper focused trend or data informed content. I would say, like, if you could think, like, if I were to use an example, it would be like maybe like an Airbnb or something could use something like this, where it would be like, you know, pricing in specific areas. It's not a local play necessarily, but like there's a scalable motion there where you can use data that your company probably has around trends or pricing or things like that within specific areas that seems to be working really well because people are searching for that as their. I know I'm going to probably put this through the lens of like a travel or hospitality lens because that's kind of like the category I was looking at on top of some other ones, but there were some standouts there. But I think it just logically makes sense to figure out a way to do that within whatever category you're in. Is like, how do you use your data to, and this is stuff we've talked about before, but integrate it into your content in a way that gets cited in the AI overviews or LLMs. Again, because that's going to be the two most prominent first touches for a lot of people these days, or at least what they see, and they're going to want to see unique data. It just increases your chances, it looks like, of getting cited in these things. I'll stop there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot. We've talked plenty already about the need for first party data, original research, original just data and content from your product and your audience. I do think it's interesting, like some of these things can also just be like some types of products, there's just a really good like product marketer or solutions engineer, someone in the company who's really good at using the tool, who can like go use your company's own product to get some really interesting cuts of data and insights to then like kind of go publish around that too. So it doesn't even have to be like, what are we pulling from our own database and aggregating of like how our customers use our product? It can also just be like the use case side of it too. But
totally.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about how, like, so that makes sense. We've talked a lot about like the importance of having that data, how that translates into actually building authority, in search engines or in LLMs, like any of that.
The key things still are like, if you have unique data points, your likelihood of getting like, the new thing is citations and obviously LLMs and things like that, but backlinks, right? Like, so if you have data points that are unique, they give you a strong motion for the digital PR component, right? Yes. You arms that function or person or however you're doing it with material to reach out to reputable sources to get cited, which also helps. Like all these things all kind of funnel back to the LLM stuff to some extent, because if you get it on an authoritative website, your stat could still be cited through that, right? And then hopefully people find their way back. But that's a big part of it, is like backlink building, citations, and LLMs. The backlink building influences domain authority, which is a ranking. That is a ranking influencing factor within search, and then all these other things. So like, there's a multifaceted authority building component there. And if it's good data, I know this is more qualitative in the eyes of like the buyer, but you will be viewed as a more authoritative source if you're presenting your own really thoroughly researched report. Like it's got to be clear, like it's got to be, data, thoroughly researched data. Like, cite how you found that data or how you aggregated it and all the things that we learned in school in terms of like that. But that, like, don't make up data, I guess is maybe what I'm saying there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to be unique.
Yeah. And then just to clarify, like one of the things that you're saying can make it more powerful is it's not just that your company or product or service might get mentioned. Like there's a difference between being mentioned in an LLM and being cited.
Right.
And so the citation is actually like linking, like there's actual like source note citation that links to that data directly versus, which it may also pull in a summary of it or whatever, but versus just summarizing like, 10 speed is great for SaaS companies, like some sort of generic takeaway, like linking to that is the actual citation versus mention. Right.
The citations are big because, that's like one of the newer North Stars for AI search is getting those. Because if you do get mentioned, that's great. And if you can if you can attribute that to anything, that it's harder. The citations are what leads to the actual referral traffic, which I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that probably, kind of poo-poo that. But like, we have dashboards, like AI referral traffic dashboards. We talked about, I think on the last episode, that GA4 is like incorporating that as a channel.
Yeah.
That's where you're getting that traffic. So it's really big, and it's really important to try to get those. Because people are clicking on them. Yeah. Obviously, then once you get them, you have to figure out how to improve the visibility or clickability of it. But that's a whole other thing that we as an industry probably are not there yet.
Yep. Cool. So I think that's probably the extent of that one, especially since we've talked about it a bit more. We're also going to talk about core pages
Yeah.
as conversion anchors. So maybe start by defining what we mean by core pages.
Yes, core pages, core marketing pages. That's anything. Let's say that historically, when we were in house, it was like product marketing did own. So that's like product pages, feature pages, solutions pages, industry.
Homepage.
What's that?
Homepage.
Homepage.
Yeah.
The most. Yeah, the big one. Industry pages. Anything that like you are deliberately putting on the primary domain, subdomain to market the product, right? That isn't educational content that funnels to those pages.
Yeah.
So it could be any of those. I'd say the majority of the ones that you see these days are like, in that we try to push for are, I mean, it depends on where you're at as a business, but like solutions pages. Let's see, especially to tie it back to what I saw in our data, those seem to be the ones that are big. Any other clarification on that?
No, I just before you got into to all of it, I wanted to make sure you clarified what we meant by that.
Yeah. You were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
No, this one was a good one because like we've heard and seen third-party data that talks about homepages getting a lot of the referral traffic and like having their heyday again because of LLMs pointing back to those. And that is true. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but again, the data just validated that like solutions pages were really big. And I do think that that's a product of a lot of the companies we work with just tend to lean towards that. And I think we create more of those too.
Yeah.
So that should be noted. But an interesting one too on that one was in the overtime data that I visualized in the roll-up, there was another strong correlation in the March 2025 core update that shot the solutions pages visibility up.
Yes.
I'm sure there were a bunch of other things that happened in March that probably included and did it, but that was the big one that I could see within the tracking tools we had. And like, I'm talking like a 40K jump in traffic, in weekly traffic from like 1 week to the next across these solutions pages. I will also caveat, we have one client that has like a ton of solutions pages because their product does a lot. So they saw massive gains because they just have tons of use cases that
can more surface area.
But that lends itself to if your product does have many use cases, which, hopefully it does, like go and create those pages because if you don't have them, and a lot of times they don't have them. We work with clients all the time, or we have in sales combos. Like that's a big thing we point out right away is like, we need to increase the footprint of the website because you have all these different use cases that you've told us about from like an ICP perspective, and this is who you're targeting. And like we don't see it in the nav, we don't see it anywhere. So that is like money being left on the table, and at least in terms of traffic, but it's also, those are technically bottom funnel pages. So there, I can keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see where companies go with that because I feel like I've lived through a couple pendulum swings on that.
Totally.
Like it felt like people were extremely granular and, creating a feature page or a use case page for every single thing. And then I think it swung the other direction where there was a desire to like try to roll up and consolidate. Like, let's not have all these fragmented things. Let's try to tell a more cohesive story.
Right.
And then, does this now cause it to actually go swing back the other direction of like, take a really granular thing like Shopify software, like, you could do like just like a distribution page of like the ways you can sell on Facebook and like all these different channels or whatever, or you could literally have a page for like every single one and all the different like channels and methods and things, and like here's one that's just this, like in your settings and that tool it's like a small section on your screen, but you do a whole page on it. I'm just kind of curious to see how that
hard to tell shifts, I guess I'd say it makes logical sense that you would create like individual pages for those types of things versus, one. I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't swing back the other way, because I feel like with the way it looks now, it seems like the way it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you never know. I mean, that's harder to predict based on like how the not only algorithm will change, but I think it's getting better at rewarding logical solutions, not just solutions pages, like solutions to the marketing motion there.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also just curious to see how that, like what's on those pages, like if there starts to be some like we talked before about like FAQs, like
Oh yeah.
that's kind of had some pendulum swings as well. Like do things like that start to emerge as, you know, we're just like the way people approach optimizing those pages.
Yeah, for
change,
sure.
but-
Well, I guess to all that too, one last thing I guess is, you know, every business and every SERP and all that is always, it's going to be different. So like, I can imagine someone sitting there listening to this going like, I've reviewed the SERPs and like, it's rewarding like one page and not multiple pages. Like we see that a lot still. So like, just I would caveat that like, do your research on what's actually happening for you. Like I'm talking about things I'm seeing for specific businesses that's working. All of this should be like, do the research, which is important, which again, AI can't necessarily do for you. And then make the right plan. But
Yeah.
you know, it's not gonna be universal always.
So I think maybe you mentioned this, but I'll just ask real quick before we move on. Do you think that like core pages is still an area where most companies are kind of undervaluing what they could contribute from like the exposure standpoint?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mainly because too, and there, because the ones when we see a product that has them, a lot of times, especially early days, which is a big part of why someone may be coming to us to work with us.
Yeah.
Is like that content's super thin. Like, yeah, they thought like, hey, we should do this, and they have, or they've created a ton. But again, like they might have taken an approach where they were like, we're gonna not programmatically, maybe in some cases because they had a lot, or just like we're gonna be like, hey, we identified a bunch of them, we just kind of churn these out. Everything requires thought and a little bit more effort than that. Like think from a value first standpoint, like what can you do to provide? It goes back to the even the helpful content we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Like yes, they're undervaluing them because they're mostly likely not putting forth all of the like comment and value or content and value that should be on the page.
Yep.
And maybe not creating them at all. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Awesome. And then the last one, which we heard definitely got some love at Brighton as well, technical SEO and site experience still being kind of a multiplier for performance.
Yeah. This is, I mean, it's near and dear to our team's heart and I think ours as well.
Yep.
It's kind of like one of those logical things again, where, you know, if your website doesn't load fast, like you should be fixing that no matter what, regardless of if you understand that LLMs and, you know, and all these search tools are weighting that heavily.
Yep.
So like saying that to begin with is like fix your site, make sure it's a good user experience. But then the real life benefits of that are that you can actually increase your visibility and traffic quite a bit because there are ranking factors. Like we know for a fact that Google still looks at it from a page speed perspective. There's lots of variables there. Core Web Vitals is kind of like the historical version of what, for many years that was what was weighted, but they've kind of de-weighted that as like the core thing. But there are many principles within that people still look at.
Yes.
And then the LLMs, we now know like the tied to freshness is just like the ability to retrieve that information quickly. And we've seen many examples of like, if you update your page and do some research, update your page with specific things, you could see yourself in an LLM citation like a day later, which I think is a real big reflection of not only you understanding like what content should be on there, but of like the site being really well structured, being having LLM bots can access that really quickly.
Yeah.
So like to, I guess, put a finer point on it. The real-time response is big. The LLMs can, and AI overviews can like really put you into those sources a lot quicker if the site's fast. Another thing that I found in some of the research and some of the stuff that was shared with us too is that like AI crawlers, like if you have heavy JavaScript, like they're gonna ignore it a lot of times, or they'll move on. It's kind of like that crawl budget thing of the old days. But they're lighter weight crawlers, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So making sure that your site doesn't have all these things on it is a benefit there.
Yeah.
I'll stop because I know it's can be super heavy in terms of a topic.
Yeah. My only real question there, I think it all generally makes sense because it's all, the stuff we've talked about before of like the way they work with, RAG and, all that stuff. So, is there any evidence yet that like you mentioned, Google still weighs like page speed and some of those technical factors. And again, there's like degrees. So I'll pause my question for a second. There's degrees of that. Like there are certainly technical things that can just literally create a very negative user experience that can be detrimental. You can literally just have, it's set to no index, and like there's kind of like some really obvious stuff, but then there's the more nuanced, how like asynchronous code is loaded and just a lot of different things within the site. So we know that that's still a factor for organic search. Is there any indication that LLMs weight it more heavily?
Yes. I think there's probably a lot to unpack there, maybe for a future episode, but in the research I saw, it said that they do. It seems to be that they are. Despite them being lighter weight, I think that that's also part of that, is that they are weighting those things heavier.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly why.
Right.
But yes,
to be determined.
Yeah, it's TBD.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that that's the case. And I think the people who are winning with some of those quicker updates and things like that, like I bet if you would really dig into they're under the behind the scenes, I was going to say undercarriage, that's weird, of the site, it would it would show that they're probably pretty fast and pretty well optimized.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, when you mentioned like technical being important to our team, near and dear to our hearts, yes, you and I definitely personally bonded a lot over Thai food and and technical SEO projects and all kinds of stuff. So
late night Thai food.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a lot there, but like what's interesting to me, again, a B2B marketer thinking through Q4, looking ahead to next year, like what we've talked about today are evidenced. We've seen that, again, everything's nuanced. So like
totally
someone could be seeing the opposite of what we're seeing. So everyone kind of needs to do their own thing. But we've talked about, we work on like kind of this clear framework for measurement, conversion, loyalty, engagement, awareness, reputation. Like this covers that. Like
all of it.
It is, we talked about authority, we talked about brand visibility, we talked about conversion, we talked about customer marketing, like all of these aspects that are going into that. So like this, like if you just feel twisted up in knots because you don't know what to believe, what not to believe, what to do, like I think there's, certainly a degree of experimentation that's needed.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of things that are pretty clear, manageable to go into your plan to continue to grow that cover those core areas of marketing and really kind of help move you forward.
And if there's anything that layers through this that anybody should also take away, is like which should be what you're doing anyway, is like think about your ICP. So like don't ignore a stage of the funnel or a content type just because the industry or someone is saying like that doesn't work. if your audience needs that, or your ICP needs that piece of content, or you in some way, and it's super relevant to your product, create it. And don't be afraid that it might be, a high traffic driver or top of funnel or anything like that.
Right.
And then also just with that, your ICP/user, like make sure the experience is really great.
Yeah.
I think those two things should bleed into every decision you make, and it touches on everything we talked about.
Yeah.
Here.
And helps you avoid the problem, like the thing that's really had people railing against top of funnel is it's irrelevant. It's not relevant to your ICP. It's not relevant to your product. Like,
right.
That's just going to be a negative thing in any part of your marketing. Like, you don't go bid on keywords, that are irrelevant to your business. So why would you approach anything else that way? And
totally.
So I think that those are good points to really kind of keep it focused.
Yeah. We talked about it months ago. Like, everyone really jumped on the HubSpot. Oh, their top of funnel went away. Like, look at this. And like everybody wrote about it. And it was just like, don't do, like, this old playbook doesn't work. And it was like, yeah, the old playbook of creating irrelevant content didn't work and shouldn't work. And
right.
Now you can see what should have always been is that there's a top of funnel that is hyper relevant, that can continue to grow, and you should always focus there.
Yep. Yeah.
As a part of your strategy.
Yep. Cool. Well, as you mentioned, we talked to a lot of companies. If this is something that's weighing on you and you're kind of thinking through planning, we would love to chat. Visit 10speed.io/podcast for more of this, or just obviously a homepage to reach out to us and chat more. Please like and subscribe for future episodes, and also you can visit newsletter.10speed.io, which is our Substack, where we do once a month kind of medium dive topic, and then you get early access to these episodes as well. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.